All right, well, good morning. My name is Carly Hankins. I am the Programs and Events Manager with the Chandler Chamber of Commerce, and I have the pleasure of being the Chamber Liaison for the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Committee that helps to facilitate all of these wonderful programs. And I am so excited for today's session. We have Crystal Blackwell, who will be joining us speaking on the viewing generational differences through a cross-cultural lens. And I have had a chance to have a sneak peek at her presentation, and there is a wealth of information. It's going to be a really great session. We are going to have some breakout rooms involved where we'll have a chance to get into smaller groups and discuss some of the key points in her presentation. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a thank you out to all of our sponsors of this event. We have PayPal, Toyota Financial Services, Intel, and APS that help make programming like this possible. So thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to all of our members and participants that are here joining us today. And without further ado, Crystal, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being part of this wonderful conversation that we're going to have about the different generations and how we're dealing with diversity, inclusion, equity. So I'm just going to jump right in and share my screen, and we're going to get going. Okay. So viewing generational difference through a cross-cultural lens. Before we begin, I wanted to just recognize this diversity and inclusion and equity team that's part of the Chandler Chamber. A great group of really just experts in their fields. Again, we all know Carly, she's our support. She really helps, she keeps us together, she gets things going for, she's our link to the Chamber. We could not have this diversity, inclusion, equity team without Terry's support as our sponsor. Dr. Bill Crawford, was his vision to have this type of format, so we have to give homage to his vision of a diversity, inclusion, equity team. Another co-chair would be Tyler Conway, Dr. Cindy Banton, Keisha Beach, Tabitha Spivey, Monique Hughes, Alafia Long, and myself, Crystal Blackwell. So this is the team. We work together. We have a lot of great things to look forward to for 2020 and 2021. So just stay tuned to some of the great things that this group will have in terms of our community around diversity, inclusion, and equity. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Our agenda, we're going to cover some we're going to do a generational overview, a very high level overview of the different generations so that we could see what the differences are. And there are some similarities. Generations view on diversity, inclusion, and equity, some tips that we can take away to support building a cross-cultural bridge, and then some final thoughts. So let's talk about some definitions. There's so many, what does this word mean? What does this mean to me? I just want to clear up some definitions. So feel free to, in the chat, and I know Dr. Bill is going to be managing chat for us, just, on your own, if you would like, when you hear the word cross-cultural, what does it mean to you? And this isn't, this is a conversation, this roundtable. So feel free to share. We're going to be all learning from each other, and we're going to also get some expert opinions and advice. Cross-cultural. You have anything in our chat about cross-cultural? So the definition of cross-cultural is relating to different cultures or comparison between them. Diversity. Now this is a definition that when you hear diversity, if you feel free and you're comfortable, put in chat, what does diversity mean to you? Like when you hear the word, what comes into your space? And if you're more comfortable going off mute and just sharing out with the group, that's perfectly fine as well.
We've got a couple people in the chat saying diversity being different perspectives.
Great. Good. Thank you guys. So diversity is a huge bucket. It encompasses a range of similarities and differences. Each individual brings to the table, including not limited to national origin, language, race, color, disability, ethnicity, gender, age, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, social economical status, veteran status, and family structure. So when we say diversity, oftentimes people go right to more of the race, more black, white, more of a race space. But when you look at diversity and how it was defined and how it was defined in our government, it really encompasses a huge range. And if you look at the definition, all of us can find ourselves in some space. So diversity is the community. We're all part of diversity. Inclusion. When you hear the word inclusion, what does that say to you? What the definition or what comes to mind? If you want to pop that in chat, or if you feel like you want to go off mute and say something, that's perfectly fine. Inclusion. So inclusion is how we define it as a set of behaviors, cultures that encourages employees or community members to feel valued for their unique qualities and experience a sense of belonging. So if you are in an organization and you have a team, people want to feel included. Even if their values are different than yours, or their perspective is different, they still want that sense of being included and being respected for that. And inclusion is becoming one of those terms that is becoming even more popular because people are speaking out. I want to be more included. I want to feel like I can be myself. My thoughts, my feelings, concerns can be included in this particular space. May it be employers or even the community. It could be a work group, but inclusion is just really you feeling valued for being who you are.
And Krista, we have some comments in the chat.
Great.
We have one that says, all feel welcome and safe and participating or belonging to a community group. And then another comment, everyone is comfortable contributing.
Love that. The first one I heard safe. People feeling safe to be in a group and comfortable, which is, that's really included. And we've all take a second and we think of a time when we did not feel included. And I think everyone's experienced that. Maybe you were the new person on the team, or maybe you were not in the group, or you were the outsider for whatever reason. And then you know what it feels like not to be included. And you know what it feels like when you're part of or you're included. It does feel safe and it is a comfortable environment. Any others, Dr. Bill? Okay, we'll go on. Equity. Equity. When you hear equity, what does that say to you? What does that mean to you? Again, there's no wrong answers. We're all learning. We're all sharing. So I want you to feel comfortable, even if you may not think that you may not think it's correct, and it actually might. So when you hear equity, what does equity speak to you? What does it say?
Krista, we just had a comment that was submitted, and I think this was probably from the last point, variety and uniqueness of individuals being recognized. People want to feel that their opinion matters and valued, feel like a part of the family. Love it, absolutely.
And you know what? You're actually starting to hear if organizations in their vision statements, they're actually saying that this company is family oriented. People are included. So you're seeing that and you're hearing it, and your different skills and gifts are valued. And there is a demand for that as well. Any ideas on equity?
Getting some responses now. To share in gains equally, providing the proper tools for every person to succeed, equal access for everyone despite privilege or advantage, a level playing field.
Love it. All those are really gold star answers. I mean, gold star answers for equity. It's about each of us getting what we need to survive or succeed, access to opportunity, networks, resources, and support based on where you are and where you want to go. And I especially like that, the picture I have up there where you see the line and you see everyone together, starting at the same space. So the definitions that were given for this were really spot on. So thank you guys for sharing. So those are just some of our definitions. And now we're gonna go into talking about the different generations. The different generations, these are some very high level. I mean, I do like an entire day webinar on different generations. So I'm really giving a high level. And again, this isn't 100%. We always have outliers. You may not be in that bucket. Some of us can range a couple of generations, but it's just good to get sort of a check into the differences. So we always want to give honor to our traditionalists, and this is the age group, and they're hardworking, detail oriented, don't really want to deal with a lot of conflict. You know, tell me what I need to do. I'm going to do it, and kind of make the charge on. Then we have our baby boomers, born in 1943 through 1960. They really sort of hosted the service into our American culture. Service first, customer comes first. Good team players, not really very sensitive to feedback, not really accustomed to, didn't get a lot of feedback, was more told what to do and did that. So may have started getting like the coaching sessions a little later in their career. So may be a little sensitive. Then we have our Generation X, adaptable, very independent, a little impatient, you know, let's go, let's get things going. And think about wherever bucket you're in, and think of this in a space of working or in a work group and how you show up. Then we have our millennials, which is the largest generation that we have on the planet. The millennials, very optimistic, technology and financial savvy. And what I mean by financial savvy, not that they're making decisions financially that are ahead of the game. They just have tools to be more financially savvy. They have apps. They're on the stock. They're doing stock exchanges. So they're a little more financially savvy in terms of tools. Need supervision, coaches in the workplace. I need a coach to coach me through a situation. Need people to follow up to say, you know, did you do a good job at this? Let me give you some additional support. Multitaskers, and that's where we introduce a lot of multitasking in that generation. Generation Z, the digital generation, these young folks are born after 2000. I tell you, they're completely different. They are just, technology is all they know and what they do. Multitasking is, they do that, they've mastered it, they're quick. Instant crowd, everything is instant and fast and quick. Impatient because they're waiting for us to catch up. They're like, okay, you guys, you need to do that. Lack deep thinking ability that is really strong amongst our baby boomers, problem solvers, because so much is instant. You know, if you have a question, Google it. And this is the generation that will do that. I don't know if you have kids that age, or maybe you're Gen Z and you've asked a question and they'll go, well, just check Google. So they need that quick, instant information. So now let's talk about how the generations look at the different generations through their lens. And again, this isn't 100%. You may see some of these in your similarities and you may not. So in the baby boomers, that generation, diversity and inclusion and social conversation, it was pretty silent. They weren't having lots of conversations at home or in the workplace as much. They knew about it, of course. They talked, that they were the generation that, really put that into an act, Civil Rights Acts. They knew about it, but there wasn't a lot of conversation in the groups in terms of work and communities. The moral and legal compliant, they knew we need to be compliant, equal rights, equal pay, you know, get it. Equity, not real sure really what that means at this point, but they know that there's some value. Integration, race riots, peaceful protest. There is some fear also because, you know what, we've been doing this a long time, not real sure where we're going, looking at the different generations, looking at diversity, inclusion, equity through my lens. It is better than it used to be, and quite frankly, tired, because it's been a long road, and this has been a topic that's been around all their lives. So Generation X is viewing this, it starts to shift. Understanding diversity through cross-cultural lens is not sure how to live it. So they get it. Generation X understands it. They got the definition, they took the training, they got the little certificate, but they don't really have the tools to really live it. So it's almost like cerebral, it's in the head. They got training and lots of training. Companies invested in training. So this group really understands it. And I bet everyone has either had one or two courses around diversity, either in a workplace or some organization. Not sure how to have the conversation yet. And what I mean by conversation about in the workplace, conversation even amongst friends. When the few who were courageous enough to step out and really ask questions and have a conversation may have met with resistance. So therefore they would shrink back and go, I'm not gonna bring up this topic again. And what I mean by that is, you know, in a workspace, asking someone a question about their culture and not sure how they're gonna respond, but sincerely want to know what it is so that they can better understand the different cultures, the different people they work with, or who's in their community. So now we're jumping into the millennial generation, and you really start to see a shift here. I think this is probably where the shift has happened. Millennials demand open communication, and not in a demanding you better do this way. Well, technology opened that up. At this point, we're a global sensation. We're beyond, my community is not my neighborhood, it's not my family, it's not my school, it's not my city, state. My community is the World Wide Web. So a global social media presence came very clear in this generation. They expect people to cognitively understand diversity. They expect all of us to understand what that means and encompass, you know, different races, LGBTQ, people who come different religions. They expect us to get that. A little concerned, they kind of have one eyebrow up when we miss that. They are actually practicing the conversation. They're not afraid to have the conversation, even though they may get a little resistance. They're still pushing and they're practicing the conversation. They're demanding training, but they want realistic training. We want to get beyond the definitions, get beyond, you know, more of the black, white, the different races. They want to get realistic training on different types of scenarios and how to deal with it. So for an example, I'm working with an organization. It's a startup. It's a very, very successful startup, about 200 employees. I would say the CEO is, you know, a Generation X. Everyone is millennial and Gen Z. And I'm customizing a diversity training for them. And it's all based on scenarios that they've presented to me, which is fascinating. They want to know how to deal with stuff in real life. And this is where the diversity is increasing in their personal circles. And what I mean by that, friends, relationships, people that are in their circles. This is what's happening with this generation. And you could see that when if you're millennial or if your kids are, you work with folks, you see that their space is diverse and they're very comfortable with it. So let's look at the view through Generation Z. These young folks are 100% digital age. Expression is celebrated. They celebrate difference. Social issues became a value. It's no longer they expect it. It's become their personal value. So if a company is not socially, and use their words, woke, that's a problem for them. If they go and look on your website and they don't see diversity amongst your board of directors, amongst your leadership, they may not want to apply for your workspace. They expect it in a school, they expect it in their friends group, they're having conversations at home, they're having conversations with their friends, having a conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion with this group, with these young people, it's not a tough talk. They appreciate training. They get excited when you give them information about it. And diversity is in their personal circle. It's who they are. They may meet someone who could be completely different, value system in terms of where they're from, race, it could be social, economic, but if they have the same values, then they're okay with that. So you really start to see the shift in terms of acceptance in this age group. So I'm gonna pause and I'm just gonna see if anyone has any comments, anything you wanna share, even some things that you've personally observed of the different generations before we move on.
Not seeing anything in the chat box at this time, Crystal.
Hey, Crystal.
Yes.
Hi, John Lyons. Good morning. Maybe this is a parking lot item and it's better covered later or in a different fashion, but as you look at these different buckets of people based on ages and what have you, do you find a sharp difference in how they define diversity or how they define equity? I mean, we looked at almost like a dictionary type of a definition, right? And we got a lot of comments on the chat, but I was curious if you have some information from working with people from these different areas. Is there much variation in terms of how folks would say define equity or diversity?
Yes, very good question. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I had a focus group with different generations, and people do, there is a slight difference. They get the textbook, but they respond to it differently. And that's where sometimes a bridge is broken. And that's where we can potentially see either could be conflict or just a misunderstanding. So no, I think that's a good question and fair to ask, and thank you.
Krista, we have something in the chat box, a comment that says, my house is full of Gen Z and I live it.
Love it.
Exclamation point. They help me re-examine my thoughts and actions and point out my cognitive bias. It's helpful to me, especially, and in parentheses, Gen X. And then we have another comment, as a Millennial, I'm probably mispronouncing that, I would definitely say representation matters in leadership when job searching. If we can't see ourselves making it to the highest level, then we are less likely to apply.
Mm-hmm. So true, so true. I love the first comment from the participant with the Generation Z. I tell you, if you're blessed to be around any, I said, strike up some conversation, and they really will challenge your ideas. It's very healthy. And you're right about the millennial who said, yeah, I'll go on the website, and if I don't see a representation of me, and again, even they read bios. So if you're a leader and you put your bio up on screen, they're gonna read that and see, what does this person do? What do they like? What's important to them? So it's really important that, if you are in a leadership role and you are going to put yourself out there, I would have different generations take a look at that and give feedback so that you're represented well.
One more comment I'd like to share with everyone, Crystal. So funny. My family of 4 is in 4 different generations. My husband is 5 years older than me and is at the very end of the baby boomers. I am in Generation X. My daughter is at the end of the Millennials, and my son is beginning Generation Z.
Okay, you're in my house. That's my house too. We're twins. I have Baby boomer, Gen X, millennial, and Gen Z. I totally get that. And boy, when we have conversations, we are loud and we are feisty, and it's amazing. I love it. We just had one last night, so I get it. So you have a fun, interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, thank you guys for hopping here and sharing some of your thoughts. I saw a hand raised. I don't know.
Yeah, Chris. Hi, Crystal. It's Jana Levanway. How are you? I just kind of had more of a question about being in this COVID environment where more people are working remotely, and has that quest for diversity in the workplace been helped or hurt by that, since we're not interacting in person quite as much?
Excellent. Oh my gosh. Are you not like in my space right now? I'm actually developing some curriculum for a client who's asking a little more than that, a little deeper. But yes, we are challenged as a culture to continue to look for diversity in terms of skills and, gender and all of the, different diversity buckets I shared. So leaders, they have their hands full because there's a demand for it, but then now we have this, our culture's changed, become more remote, and no one quite frankly knows if we're ever gonna shift completely back. So then there goes diversity is even in workspace. Again, that's different. So yes, I do think that we have diversity continues to define itself. And we're at a time where we're going to have to look at what does remote look like and how we're going to be diverse and inclusive and equitable in a remote space. Good question. Okay, so here's our first breakout session. We're going to have some of our team members facilitate breakout sessions, you guys. I just want you to share, feel comfortable. This is the first question that you're going to go to your breakout session and discuss. You're going to spend 10 minutes. But the question we're going to talk about is, what is holding us meaning our community, everyone, back from maximizing diverse groups of people? So we're going to go ahead and launch into the breakout sessions, and we're going to talk about what's holding us back from maximizing diverse groups of people. And you can look at it from a workspace, a community, your business, personalize the answer. Have fun. How's my time? Is time okay?
Good. Yeah. I really like that some people are speaking out, some in the chat. That's awesome. That's great.
I was going to ask you that. Does it feel interactive?
Yeah, no, I like that.
Good. And not like preachy or, okay, good.
No,
no one likes that. No. We have about 30 some odd people?
Yeah, I think it was up to like 27.
That's good. I like
Yeah.
that. That's a good
Yeah,
feel.
it's like higher than some of the in-person ones have been even. And it's great.
No. Yeah, I'm super interested to hear how the breakouts go.
Yeah.
How people feel comfortable sharing.
Mhm.
And just some good like questions. Really
Definitely.
thoughtful. Like, yeah. I got a pop-up that says someone's in a waiting room. Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Did you get okay?
There should be an invitation. Perfect.
Okay. It's funny that participant said they had all the generations in the house. I so get that.
I love that.
It's so, I wish I could, like, I probably should like videotape some of our conversations because we all like something totally different. And then we try to figure out like how to level it. And sometimes like one to get mad or
Yeah.
interesting. And then I kind of step back and go, well, because we're coming from a different space and
Mhm.
adamant about this is what I think we should do. And
It's so funny how that the generation plays such a role because you're all in the same home all the time. You have the same environment, but still, though, it's so different.
right, absolutely, especially in this space. Yeah, it is. I could clearly see the difference between my son, like the baby boomer and Gen Z. It's like,
Really, how funny. So you have one millennial and one Gen Z.
yes, I'm
How
X,
funny.
my husband's a baby boomer, so I had them look at this, and give me like
Mhm.
perspective and what they thought. But yeah, so every now and then I'll throw a topic out, and then they just go at it.
I love it.
How many groups do we end up having?
There's 4 rooms.
Okay, 4. Okay, good.
Yeah, I had Alafia, Monique, Dr. Cindy, and Dr. Bill leaving rooms. And there's a couple minutes before our next room, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. so I can rearrange everyone.
Oh yeah, you definitely got time for that.
Okay.
Alafia, Monique, Dr. C, Dr. Bill. Okay, so
Mhm.
oh, poor Tyler. I was hoping do you want me to let them in? Admit, is it Indria?
Oh, yes, we'll admit them and then send an invitation really quickly.
Okay.
No, I think they've been in there for about 7 minutes.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna send the 2-minute message out.
Okay.
We'll see this.
That message warnings is so helpful.
What was?
That message, the warning, the 2-minute warning is so helpful.
Yeah, it is, because it's like, especially like in the networking ones, if not everyone has gotten through, it's like, okay, you're done, next. We have 7 people left.
Right. Especially the networking ones, because people, like one person may get caught up and you don't want to like, shut up.
Yeah,
You know, like, let me do my commercial.
right. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the rooms, which will give 60 seconds. So some might come back, some might stay the whole 60 seconds.
Well, they're hanging in.
That's good, I love that.
I know. Hello.
Welcome back.
I know.
We had so much fun in our room.
Yay. Love that. So you can let me know when everyone's back.
Yeah, looks like.
I have a
looks like
question,
everyone-
Crystal, if you could answer. Was the size of this meeting capped at like, we're not going to do more than 30 or what have you?
You know, Carly can better answer that. I don't think we cap our roundtables, do we?
We do not.
Okay, so just an observation. I would look at, this is a great group and I may be a little bit thankful that it's not a huge group, but I would have expected 50, 60 people to be interested and maybe engaging in this topic. And that's why I was a little bit, maybe a combination of pleasantly surprised in a selfish way, because the smaller the group, the more you get to know people and interact, right? But a little bit surprised maybe that it wasn't larger.
You know, this is the first of many of
Sorry about that. I'm on a webinar with the diversity inclusion thing for the chamber, but that's okay. I can still talk, but I just it wouldn't go through the computer like that.
Excuse me, Crystal, if we could ask everyone to mute if you're not speaking, that would be helpful to us, okay? So if everyone could mute if we're not speaking.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bill.
So it's Martina, who Venezuela, who is our lead chef.
We still have someone who's not on mute. Right. So John, I want to go back to your question really quick and then we can go on, but I don't know. Are you okay, John, if I repeat the question for the group? Okay, good. Thank you. John had said that he was mixed feelings, good and bad, that he expected maybe with the topic that we're talking about today, we would have more participants. We didn't cap it. We never do. I think we have, 27 to 30 participants, and John was expecting at least 50 or more. And I was sharing with him that I think as we continue to have these roundtables and and it's safe and comfortable with some really good topics, I think this will grow. The team is built. We can handle as many participants that come our way. So I think as all of us get more familiar and comfortable, and as we start bringing up just great topics, we have a couple that are just really probably the first time the chamber's even discussed it on the list. That's going to really invite just a diverse in our community. So thank you for recognizing that, and that was actually encouraging for us. So thank you.
If I could just interject also, everyone on the call should applaud themselves, right? Because to attend a roundtable and come open-minded, right, to learn, first have to admit that you don't know it all, right? And as business people, a lot of times that's harder for us to do. We love to feel like we have it all figured out. And so, as this ripples outward, I think more and more people will come to the realization that they don't have it all figured out, right? None of us do. And so we can only stand to learn about things like this.
Well said. Hear, hear. Love it. Well said. So group leaders, Alafia, Monique, Dr. Cindy, Dr. Bill, if you want to share some different highlights in your group, or if you want to maybe have someone in your group share just some different, things, maybe something you didn't know or something that stood out to you, or just how did your breakout sessions go for you all?
Well, I'll start if that's okay with you, Crystal. One of the things that surfaced very early in our room is that sometimes people are a little bit uncomfortable engaging in conversations about diversity. They don't know how to go about approaching people and what to say, and concerned that it might offend individuals and reluctant to say something because they think it might offend individuals. And then as we approached the end of our time, and we actually ran out of time and got sent back to the main room, Ebony had a great point. And Ebony, I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing with the entire group just a brief synopsis of what you had to say. Are you okay with that, Ebony? Can I put you on the spot?
Uh-oh. Yes. Thank you. Well, I was just saying, the question was asked, what can we do to change things? And I said, well, we need to speak up. We need to speak up. I can tell you, when I first moved here to Arizona and I started working at my company, I did feel that they were hiring too many young girls straight out of high school. And, it's great they have that opportunity, but you have to diversify your office with people of different experiences, different perspectives. Why not hire more older women, even men, and just diversify thought, different thoughts and within the company by doing so. Yeah.
Thank you, Ebony. So that concludes our comments, Crystal.
Yeah, first I want to say, I don't want to go on to the next couple of groups to summarize what your experience was to thank you, Ebony, for having the courage to say this. a lot of this is courage, you know, and it is uncomfortable. And for you to demonstrate that courage and go to your organization, and you saw that was a pain point, and you saw there was an opportunity, and you called it out. But then to share it with us on this call, on this seminar, I'm hoping it maybe give others some courage to have those conversations that we know can be uncomfortable, either in your workspace or your community. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Dr.
Crystal.
Yes, I'll go next. Thank you, Crystal. We had a great conversation in our breakout room, and John and Matt, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Right early on, we came up with some good points about why don't we maximize these groups? And I think John said it best to summarize a little bit. Then I want him to jump in on his point. He said sometimes, you know, people are just comfortable where they are and they don't want to upset the apple cart, or this is working. Why do we have to mess it up? Or why do we have to change things? You know, let's just go with what's happening. John, can I put you on the spot and have you elaborate a little more, because your point was beautiful, and Matt as well?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Benton. Listen, the other element is when people do feel like, in general, and again, I lead a Rotary Club down in Sun Lakes, and about 80 members of the club, and average age is 72. So I'm one of the younger people in the club, right? And so they've been very successful in so many ways. So they do have that feeling of, hey, if it's working well and we're successful every year. But the other thing that I would want to just park out there is people, when they hear this topic come up, assume it's going to be a very rocky discussion, a very maybe pain points and uncomfortableness. And I'm concerned that when you feel like it's working and you have a choice, not a lot of people are going to say, let me take that road full of potholes and a lot of challenge and drama ahead. Even if they in the back of their mind bought into might come out the other end better. I'll go back to your comment about baby boomers of being tired. Maybe the fight and the dog just isn't there as much as we would like it to be.
Good. Just so much is in that your response, John. I mean, that we could, as a coffee conversation, I love it, coffee conversation. But what I do want to touch a little bit on is that part where you said, you know, things are working. I don't want to upset it, and I don't want to have that conversation. The conversation, the dialogue is changing, and I really hope this seminar you're seeing that we're having a really good conversation on some tough topics, and we're comfortable. And even if we're not, we feel safe. So it's really about we're presenting this differently. Not the old school way. We present it differently. So hopefully as time goes on, people will feel like, wow, I can enter this space and I can ask that question that's burning inside that I want to know the answer to. And I won't be isolated. I won't feel attacked, and I will be respected. So I think that's really the change that's happening. So I believe in my heart, as we all get better and get trained how to have those conversations, move egos aside and really open up, then we can really make that shift.
And what was really effective in our group, and it happened organically, we started telling stories. We started telling about our experiences on the topic. So we answered the question kind of upfront, and then we started sharing stories, and that made it more real and meaningful. Matt told a beautiful story about, you know, his job and what he was working with, and that hit home with everybody in our group. So, you know, just talking about our experience in a storytelling way is effective.
Because remember, guys, we all fit in that diversity bucket. We really do. And we all have a wonderful story to share. So good. Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, Alafia, your group.
Yes. You know, before I jump into it, just to touch on that, we sell PayPal all day, right? One of the most common objections we hear is, well, my checkout works, right? People come, they enter their credit card, it works. But works doesn't always mean works best, right? The abacus works, but people don't use it anymore because there's a bigger, better model, right? that includes more moving parts. When those moving parts work in unison, you get the calculator, right? And so just something to touch on there, right? Because just because something works doesn't always mean that it's the best for the situation.
Good.
Our focus group was actually wonderful. Two things really stuck out, and to kind of piggyback on something that came out of Dr. Crawford's session, was apprehension to speak up, but it was from the youth perspective. Both Rory, excuse me, and his beach had chimed in about how sometimes the youth are hesitant to speak up, right? Because it's coming from a young place, right? Because it's voice. And we talked about actually how important that voice is right now, because sometimes the youth see the folly of us older folks, right? They don't even understand why these biases and lack of diversity exist and how it can exist, right? With so many different diverse people. So that came out, and I thought it was really poignant.
Good.
And then B, if you wanted to elaborate a bit more on the self-awareness, when we talked about what could hold folks back, she said a lack of self-awareness, one of the biggest things, and not being able to recognize your own unconscious bias. B, can I put you on the spot? Did you want to elaborate or just kind of talk to that just a little?
I mean, I think you hit it. I think it's just more so, you know, we get a little, we're uncomfortable sometimes. Kind of like what everybody else said, we're uncomfortable sometimes, you know, kind of breaking that ice. But if we are a little bit more self-aware, we're open to, you know, that understanding and understanding that, hey, we are coming from different places. Not that we necessarily have to completely agree to everything, but I think it's just being open to hearing and listening and understanding.
And you are super sharp, because as we go into deeper into this seminar, we're going to touch on that. So, you know, thank you for, you know, bringing that out. And it is important that we have a realistic view of self, that we don't see ourselves differently. So thanks for sharing. And then we have Monique in your group.
All right. So yes, one of the things that was brought up as far as, you know, there's a bit of a lack of resources, I believe, in the training and the, you know, the opportunities maybe to have these harder conversations. I had the pleasure of speaking with Essen from SRP, and you know, he had mentioned that some of those harder conversations are beginning to happen there at SRP, and it's a way in which they can advance the conversation and advance, hopefully in the long term, some change. And also another great point that came up was from Janet, saying, you know, she had a new CEO coming into the business that she believes now is more focused on making those changes. And, you know, it does come from the top a lot of the times. Like, they have to care enough to want to do something different, or to make an impact in a way that's going to serve everyone as a whole. And to see that coming from leadership is a big deal. And I think, you know, having that awareness that there is something that we can be doing better is a key privilege to that, you know.
Excellent. Excellent point. I know with my business, and also I know Dr. Banton, we deal with a lot of leaders, executive, that C-suite space. That's a rough spot, you know, to get people to open up. But that's really where a lot of training is pointed to, and that's where it begins. You know, so if you're fortunate enough to have a leader, and I think she said Janet had a new CEO to come in and is already making that a focus. That is huge, because that just screams everybody matters, and then you go from there. So yeah, that is good. That's good to share. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sounds like you guys' breakouts were successful, so we're going to go ahead and move on and continue to dig in. So we're going to talk about some tips. These aren't, I mean, there's probably a million tips. These are just some high-level tips to building a bridge. So if nothing else, you can walk away from this seminar with just something for yourself, a to-do. So you always want to have something in your toolkit that you can practice. You want to break down biases. And that, again, these are things that you yourself, and I think bias actually came up, unconscious bias, conscious bias in there. So you want to get an understanding of what biases are, and you want to challenge yourself and ask yourself, is this person showing up this way, or am I allowing a bias to answer the question for me? And that ties into the brilliant comment around self-awareness. This is all about being completely aware of yourself and being brave enough to hold yourself accountable. Saying, you know what, that's not necessarily true. All people of that particular culture, of that religion, do not respond that way. And we got to toughen up and do that for ourselves. Practice patience. And this is not necessarily age. It could be training. It could be someone understanding a different point of view. Practice patience. Everyone's journey is not your journey. So you may be at step 4 in this whole process, and someone may be step 1. Oh, how about this? Haven't even got on the stairs at all. They're just standing with their arms waving. So we have to practice some overall patience. And I think John had made a point earlier that he's in a group where he's the youngin', he has folks that are older than him, and then they feel everything is okay. We can practice some patience and hopefully they can move along. But I think we all can need a dose of that, especially during this time when we have huge social change going on in our country, in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, there's a lot of different conflict and pain points. So I think a little scoop of patience can go a long way. Be open. And again, I think that came up as well in your breakouts. Be open to difference. And being open means they may not think like you, look like you, talk like you, speak like you, a different background, but be open to their story. And I think there was some storytelling going on in one of the groups. I think it was Dr. Banton's group, where people they felt safe to start sharing their story. And they were open. I think that's where we get to the learning comes from. So be open to whatever comes your way, whatever difference. And that's a mindset shift. And that's if nothing else, that's a challenge for every day. What can I be open to that's different than where I'm at? How can I expand my circle, my thoughts? So be open. Get informed. Guys, let's do the work. Let's get out there and let's learn some things. Let's do some research. The beautiful thing about us having the internet is that you can pretty much Google just about anything. So I want to challenge you, if there's a question you have, or if you want to learn more about a particular religion or a particular race, or why does Black Lives Matter, or why are we responding this way, or how come this organization only wants to hire younger women. I mean, we can get informed and ask questions and not stay in a box. So that is something that we can take full responsibility for, is to be open and become a student of diversity, of inclusion, and of equity. So this is on a breakout. This is a question, and you guys can respond. I'm really loving when people go off mute and just want to share out if you feel comfortable, but what would we gain by being more diverse and equitable and inclusive? So who wants to share, what do we gain? And we're talking our community in terms of our work community, our business community, our country as a community. What can we gain? Anyone wants to share?
I think we will gain by having a richer and more balanced dialogue than if we're not. If we're not being inclusive, if we don't create an environment of equity, then the comments and the dialogue that needs to happen will be suppressed. It will be mitigated, or it may not even come up at all.
Right, excellent, love that.
Krista, we have in the chat box, people feeling accepted, and we gain insight to other processes.
Yes, love that. I really love gaining an insight to other processes. You know, again, diversity is about everything. Remember that definition. It's not about Black, white, you know, Hispanic. It's about diversity in thinking, diversity in solving problems. So it's a really big one. Thanks for sharing. And we have room for one more response.
We have a couple in the chat box, more representative of population and community, growth, perspective, market share, trust, social economics, achieve more with fewer, and then there's some more coming in, but I know we have limited time.
Thank you guys for sharing this stuff. This is good. This is good. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bill. So we're going to go to our next breakout session. So it's going to be, how do we build a generational cross-cultural bridge? Again, this is our community. So we're in charge of building. We're in charge of uncovering, you know, the areas, the pain points, and we're in charge of learning about, and now we're in charge of how we're going to build it. So this is when we're going to share different ideas. I really, you know, encourage you to think out the box, think what worked for you, share what's worked in your environment, what you've experienced, so that we all can, again, gain just something else to put in our tool belt. So we're going to have Carly break everyone up. We're going to have 10 minutes. And the question is, how do we build a generational cross-cultural bridge? How do we do it? Have fun.